Welcome to another episode of the Tailgate. We are again high atop Thompson Reynolds Stadium. I never came up here in the past because I never got to drive up here, so I appreciate you doing that. I'm with Vestavia Hills head coach Robert Evans. Appreciate you hopping on and letting us in up here.
Absolutely. Anything we can do to support local high school coverage is important. It's important to our sport, and it's important to promote our guys and our program, and that's kind of part of the overall message of kind of where we're trying to get is doing anything from social media to these type things to promote our program.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you doing it. It's taking a chance on me just doing this on my own, so I really appreciate that. You're the first head football coach I've had up here, so props to you for giving it a shot. Maybe some others will follow here pretty soon. So let's start. Let's talk about last year a bit, and then we'll talk, kind of the upcoming season. But was last year kind of what you expected? How did it kind of go in your mind?
It went kind of actually how I expected before the season, because you look at I thought we had a good team, but we had so many baseball players, including John Paul, who he didn't have the off season, didn't have the spring training to get through. So there was how we try to play. It's a little bit frenetic, and it's a lot on those kids mentally. But we started out the season, with the same schedule we start out this season with, which is pretty brutal. And our whole goal the whole year was to just get in the playoffs in this region. If we get in and we're healthy at the right time, we knew we were going to be a really tough out, and that we would have a chance to win even against the better teams in our state. And that's exactly how it played out. We go up as the 4 seed to Austin, and we're up. We just really played a clean, dominated that game. We're up 45-0, 2 or 3 minutes into the third quarter, and then had a lot of momentum, and a lot of people were picking us at Thompson. We're up at halftime, and then have a chance in the fourth quarter, and things didn't work out our way. But I think we made significant strides. But we had 43 seniors, and just a tremendous class of guys that are used to being in tough. In the case of point, our baseball guys last night just dominated, and it's a lot of those same guys that are used to kind of being in those environments and really embrace the challenge of being in big moments. And so I think probably once every 3 or 4 years you're going to have a team like that at Vestavia where you can beat anybody in the state. But we understand this is the toughest region in America. You got 3 top 100 teams, and then you've got ascending teams like Spain Park. Tim's doing a good job over there, and Oak Mountain's got a new coach. Tuscaloosa County, Coach Weingardner, has a proven winner. They're in the 3rd year of his program, and then Chelsea's in the 2nd year with their new coach. And so it doesn't get any easier, but we've got to find a way here to win these games against the better teams. And hopefully in a few years, once our program's kind of fully developed, we'll be in a position to where we can host playoff games and possibly win the region. And but I was super proud of our guys in our community, embraced our product, and there's second to none support here in this state.
I remember talking to you about this time last year. I was doing a story for the Starnes Media, like the preseason magazine, and what I wanted to focus on was this region and the new coaches, because there were 4 newcomers out of the 8 schools. I was like, that seems like something interesting. And I remember when you and me talked, you said the goal was to play Thompson twice.
Right. Yeah.
And lo and behold, you get the guaranteed game in region regular season. I was here for that.
Right.
And then, like you said, you'll go to the playoffs, and you're up at half. I wasn't at that game.
We were up 3-0, and then it's 7-6, and then it's 14-12, and we're getting the ball back with a few minutes to go, and it didn't work out. But we were kind of right there at the end, and that's, as a coach, you say, if you can envision, that's where you want to be, to have a chance in the fourth quarter against the 3-time defending champions. And it didn't work out, and we have to fight another day, another year. But I couldn't have been prouder of our team last year, and at the same time, we have to turn the page because a lot of good players walked out the door.
Yeah. Being a first-year head coach last year, and you mentioned having 43 seniors, is that a help to you as a first-year head coach? Is it foundational for your program in some sort of way?
Absolutely, because those guys did things the right way, and and we're blessed to have some talented juniors like Jordan Moss and JD, and a lot of our skills coming back this year. So it's a good mixture of tough, smart kids, and that's a typical Vestavia group. That's what you play with here, and you have to play to your advantage. You have to weaponize your intelligence and try to be stylistically difficult team to prepare for. I think we were that by the end of the year, and we'll look to add on to that. But we've got to find some bigger bodies, and we got to create some bigger bodies in the weight room and nutrition, and then we're going to have a bunch of younger kids play for us this year. But I lucked into just one of the better senior classes to come through here in a while.
JP had mentioned, what did JP mention that I was going to bring up? I'm going blank, and I shouldn't go blank here. But JP was just talking about some of the seniors and all of that this last year. Do you think those guys kind of rubbed off on some of these younger guys? Like you mentioned, Jordan Ross, as a junior, JP was a junior. Do you see these guys really kind of stepping up into that more leadership type role?
Yeah, you hope so. But I think most people assume that, like year one, it's a linear progression to where you eventually wind up kind of at the end and where you want to get. And that's just not the case in football because your team is different every year. We had a lot of leadership, tough, bigger, wrestler type bodies, football, baseball, a ton of multi-sport kids with some top-tier talent in our younger classes. I mean, it was just a great mix. Our coaches gelled, our players gelled, and we were in every game we played. And but now it's on these guys who haven't had necessarily the same success growing up in the youth, in the middle school program, the freshmen, and now these guys they're the leaders, and we're going to have to rely probably more so on younger players than we did last year.
I remember now. It occurred to me what I was going to say about what JP mentioned. Just about kind of last thing about this past season. We talked a little bit about the Hewitt-Trustful game. I was there for that one. And I mean, just back and forth. Y'all came out the gate. He kind of mentioned that game being the quote-unquote turning point in the season. Yep. Do you agree? And if so, like, what?
I think offensively it could have been a turning point because it was the first time that we really gelled against a quality opponent. Like Hewitt's got good players on both sides of the ball. And we didn't stop them a whole lot, and they didn't stop us a whole lot. And they're standing in the end. And Coach Floyd's son played a fantastic game. And they're skilled players. It's probably the best game he played all year. He threw the ball well. They made plays down the field. Their receivers caught the ball probably better than they did in any other game. And they controlled the line of scrimmage. And sometimes you just tip your hat and say they were the better team than they were that night. But it was I'm sure stylistically it was a fun game to cover because it was like basketball on grass. It drives me crazy as a defensive guy, but that's the way we're going to play. Yeah. And so, you look at things on the front end when you, as a coach, you say, okay, we got to beat Trustful, Thompson, and Hoover to get to where we want to get.
Right.
We're not going to beat them scoring 10 or 17 points. We have to commit to scoring in the mid-20s, early 30s. And the crappy thing was, from my perspective, we scored 35 or 38 and still lost. So that should never happen. You score 38 and lose. You've had a poor night defensively, and it's one of the worst nights probably ever been associated with. But at the same time, they had a lot to do with it. Peyton Floyd made a lot of plays, and they did a great job offensively, and they executed well. And our guys executed well. So offensively, I would say it's probably a turning point for us. But defensively, obviously, it's like a reset after that week. And you don't make excuses. I used to hate being at places and you whip somebody and they say, well, we just didn't play well. Well, the other team didn't make you play.
They had something to do with it.
So, it's a two-way street. So when that happens to you, you recognize we didn't play well defensively. They played well, but they made us not play well.
Right.
So, it's I can't stand and say, well, we had a bad night. We didn't play. Why does everyone always play bad against Georgia? They have something to do with it. Same thing with Alabama. Same thing with Thompson. Well, we just didn't play. No, they make you not play well.
That's right.
So
that's right. Yeah, you mentioned about it being a fun game to cover, and it is. It is like the back and forth, and it keeps me a little young. I hate to go back and forth because I don't sit up in the press box. I'm old school. I like being on the sideline with you guys, and I'm charting plays. And I'm like, it's like halftime of that game. I remember, and I'm over there because I'll add up all my stats at halftime, and I'm over there like, whew. I was telling JP that, some people it seemed like file into games on Friday nights maybe a little late.
Yep.
Parking be what it is at different schools. It's hard to get in, traffic, all those things. And I remember tweeting like, hey, you may not be here yet, but it's already 16-0 Vestavia because it was, it was right out the gate. Y'all just hit the ground running.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
So 2023. Give me a word.
Yes.
Give me a word for that schedule.
Brutal. And no, but it's, you know what, I mean, like people say, and it is what it is, but you think about our first 3 games on the road. Mountain Brook's the state runner-up, Homewood's the semifinalist, Thompson's the 4-time defending champ, and then we come back here for our first game against Hoover.
And y'all don't play here till after like Labor Day.
Yeah, we don't play here till after Labor Day, and then we play Spain Park, which is essentially kind of turned into a mini playoff game. If you just look at the region. Now, Tuscaloosa County and Chelsea and Oak Mountain can have something to do with that. But if you're just betting odds, like that's the game that kind of sticks out in the forefront. We could be 0-4 and win that game going into the off. We could feel good about our chances.
Exactly.
So, you know, and not that we're planning that. I mean, we're
Sure.
planning to be 4-0, and you know, the mindset and the mantra is anybody, anywhere, anytime, and we'll be aggressive and have good plans. But I actually like the challenge of the schedule, because when you get to the 1 seed in the North, when you play a challenging schedule, you get to the playoffs, and it's we've already played the best we can possibly play.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've seen Thompson before, and we'll see Hoover, but those ultimately it's still the road runs through Thompson. It used to be Hoover, now it's Thompson. Thompson's kind of taken their pride in the playoffs the last 4 or 5 years, and we got to go through those guys. It may be Hoover, it may be Trustful in the second round, but ultimately, until somebody proves otherwise, those dudes are going to be there. Yeah, Coach Freeman's done a great job.
It's funny, earlier today I was actually out in Alabaster at Thompson talking to a kid who just graduated. So he came up, he brought a state championship ring with him, and he was like, I didn't know which one you wanted me to bring. And I was like, such a flex. Like,
right, yeah.
Which state championship ring should I bring? Wow. But we talked a little bit about the QB there, Trent Seaborn. And I was like, was he even up here? Like, we were talking about the campus and just how big Thompson High School is, you know, just the parking lot. I mean, it's like a college. And he was like, no, he was at the middle school last year. That just blew me away that you've got a guy that ends up, you know, leading them offensively to a state championship. And he's just now about to be a freshman in high school. I mean, there's absolutely, not just Thompson, I mean, mostly Thompson right now, but there's just no rest for the weary in this region at all.
Well, the other thing that people don't talk about is the guy that they got both quarterbacks coming back.
Zach
Sims.
He had surgery, yeah.
Had surgery. He's coming off an injury, but you could talk to some people and you'd say, I'd rather see the Seaborn kid than the Sims kid. And
quite a problem to have.
You know, it is quite a problem. But I'll say this, and it's been proven true through spring in Clemson. The kid that Peter Woods is one of the top 2 or 3 players I've ever seen play in high school. He was fantastic. I think he was wrecking shop in Clemson's spring game as a what would be a high school senior. So he was just kind of an otherworldly. Hopefully he can stay healthy and have a fantastic career and make a lot of money one day. But he is a game changer for them. They're still going to have great talent up front, but he is such a difference maker. It'll be interesting to see kind of how they replace him. I mean, obviously they have other good players as well. But going to be a challenge. But look, you know, life is about challenges, and we look forward to, like, our kids embrace that moment, being in that environment, going to their stadium, being right there at the end with those guys, and we look forward to getting back. Hopefully to the same scenario, but it's not a given. Don't take anything for granted, and we'll have to have some good fortune, stay healthy, and play good in big games to get back there.
Any kind of, I mean, you played them last year because it was your first year here, and I know it's a crosstown kind of thing, but going back to Mountain Brook, I mean, you were the DC there for what, 4 years?
4 years, yeah.
And so now you're going. Will that be your first time in a game situation back in Spartan Stadium when y'all kick off this year?
Well, we've had a JV game. Those JV games are really important. No, it'll be the first Friday night back at Mountain Brook, and I tell you, Coach Yeager's a really good friend of mine. He's kind of like a life mentor in many ways. And there's some other coaches there as well. They got a great coaching staff and do a really good job. They have the oldest living active coach. Did you know that? If you can get him on your Talegate podcast, he'd be a fantastic.
I'm blanking on the name. I can hear him.
Yes.
But I'm blanking on the name.
His name is Mike Thorson.
Yes.
And he is the oldest active living coach in America, and you should have him on your Talegate.
You can tell me once we stop this how old he is. I don't want to out his age, but I can hear him right now on the sideline because
Yeah, and it's incredible. He lives in a nursing home.
Really?
I mean, it's active.
Yeah, well, sure.
And then every day he gets up at 4 a.m., does his workouts, eats his pudding pops in the morning, gets in his minivan, drives to work, and he's the first person there every day. He's got my energy.
I will be damned. That's awesome.
It's fantastic.
I need to get him up here.
You should get him on the podcast.
That'll be cool. So, I mean, that schedule, like you said, brutal. And that's what I was talking to JP about. You know, Mountain Brook, Homewood to start, you know, long-standing on the schedule. And then the region, you open it at Thompson. But then it seemed like you said, some of those key region games, like a region game against a Spain Park, against the Hewitt Trustful. I can't remember the rest where they are, but it seems like you get some really key ones right here behind us in this stadium.
Yeah, we get Hoover and Spain Park week 4 and 5 for us, and then we have the off week. And you kind of know where you are, and if you can win, really for us, if we can win 2 of those first 3 region games between Thompson, Hoover, and Spain Park, we're sitting really in position. And ultimately, I don't know if we'll be able to do it, but long term, we need to get in a position. It's been a long time because the region's kind of been what the region is since they ascended to Trustful for about 8 years now.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since Vestavia hosted a playoff game. And we need to get to the spot where we can turn this place kind of into a zoo on a playoff atmosphere, hosting one of those other teams. So I don't know. The state may. There's rumors out there that the state may bust up the region depending on how classification happens next year. If they did, that would probably lend itself to us making the playoffs most year. But we don't take for granted what we did last year. And again, the goal every year for us is just to get in at the end. And I'll take our chances against anybody if we can get in.
Now, I've heard some of that too about, you know, the next reclassification. Certain teams maybe coming up to 7A, the potential for 1, maybe 2 to drop back down to 6A, all that. But what we do know at some point, and I can't remember the exact details, is that eventually the playoffs, the 7A playoffs, are at least going to be broken up, like which region plays which region in the first round, right?
I've heard that, and I don't know if that makes a whole lot. It doesn't make any sense in my mind. I understand what they're saying, but there's essentially the South has a region very similar to this region where you have
Auburn, Phoenix City,
Central Phoenix City, Prattville, and some other good teams. So if our region matched up with their region, you'd have the 7 best teams in the state playing, and then you have a team from Huntsville or a team Fairhope or whoever it might be from the South playing in the finals that would probably struggle to make the playoffs in a region. So, you know, I understand the sentiment. I really like the idea. I think it was actually Coach Freeman that proposed it. Hey, rank all the teams that make the playoffs 1 to 16. Like we can afford to travel. I would gladly be a 5 or 6 seed and host a playoff game, and then go play a playoff game at Auburn or at somewhere else we haven't played, and let the best teams be there in the end. But putting all the best teams on one side of the bracket doesn't make any sense to me. It's and I said it maybe to you or Kyle or somebody last year. It's like you can pretty much map out what the semifinals are going to probably be before the season. And, you know, there's been some talk in years past about going to 48 teams in 6A. I would love if we had a full 32-team playoff. I don't see how state makes more
everybody
money.
Gets in.
Either everybody gets in, or you go to 48 and then you take 4 of 6 teams from a region. You have 16 regions, 16 regions, and so there's a lot of different ways to go about it. I think people are kind of getting tired of the status quo, which has happened. And maybe the same teams continue to win, but it's the processes to get there that would be different and probably lead to more excitement. Like I said, there's no reason for us not to host a playoff game once every 2 or 3 years. And it'd be good for our community, and it hadn't happened in a long time. And it's just a byproduct of being in what was voted the toughest region in America. It's not an excuse; it just is what it is.
It would be interesting to see, because like if it was like a ranked 1 through 16, like Coach Freeman, like you mentioned. I mean, I kind of look at that almost like what this expansion of the college football playoff is. Kind of like that 12, where you know you're ranked, and then it's on campus kind of thing, and you know that would be cool.
Yes, I think it would be great. I just think sometimes when you change and get out. The other thing that I would love to see change that I just don't understand for the life of me is the Wednesday night 7A championship. There's no other no other level of football anywhere in America that plays a championship game on Wednesday night. And you might have some Pee-wees, but there's no high school, there's no state classification. I did a little research on this.
Yeah.
There's no state that plays, except for Alabama, the most football-crazy state in America, on the highest classification in Auburn on a Wednesday night, and it's a tough ask for people in the middle of the week from Thompson or from Vestavia or from parts of, where there's people in Mobile having to travel in the middle of the week, and then you got school the next day, and you just have all these logistical challenges.
Is it just so that it's like I don't know what the AHSAA, how they come to that, but is it just because 7A is the biggest classification, they get their own night? Like, is that
no?
the reason?
I think my guess would be logistically because the 7A doesn't play the semifinals the week before. Getting Thursday 3 games, Friday 3 games. I would love to see it go back to, if it's not Thursday or Friday, go back to a Saturday, or put the 6A Saturday at 1 o'clock, like at Crampton Bowl or somewhere like that. I hope, and I think everybody's talked to, there's a broad consensus amongst people I've talked to that we would love to see the state championships played in Birmingham. I think the times, and some people make the argument, well, it's always been my dream to play at Alabama or Auburn. Well, it's never been anyone's dream that I know of to play in front of 10 or 12,000 people in front of an empty stadium in Alabama. So it's not just the field. And the other thing that makes sense to this is that field in Auburn this past year was by the 6A championship game was completely torn up, and there's guys slipping all over the field. You got a turf field at Crampton Bowl, you got a turf field in Birmingham with great amenities around and centrally located. It makes too much sense, but I don't get paid to make those decisions. It
Maybe
just seems like I'm a big proponent of common sense, and that seems like a lot of common sense to me.
It does. Well,
what do I know?
Well, and like just going back to the playoff shakeup, whenever that happens, if that happens, I can't remember if that's approved or it's just being tossed around at this point. But I'm imagining, on certain years when certain regions do match up and certain teams make the playoffs, I'm imagining a first round game where like Florence travels to Fairhope.
Right.
And like you're going all the way across the state. Or when Auburn, let's say Auburn has a down year and they're in as the 4 seed and they have to go like all the way to Bob Jones or something like that. And I mean, you talk about travel on just like a Wednesday. I know those games would be on Fridays, but I mean you're going to have to leave the house at 2:30.
It's a half day deal, for the teams in the state, and maybe I don't know what the answer is. I really don't. But you could in my deal with all 32 getting in, I think you could do some type of ranking, and it would make a lot of sense. Whether you ranked them all in the South, you ranked them all in the North. But I do think people want to see just something different than what happens where the 4 seed up north in Huntsville is usually not a great football team. They're coming to play Thompson. And Thompson's playing.
It's going to go
by
52
the second
to
quarter
10.
with their. So I don't know if there's a way around that, because Thompson's going to be a lot of people that haven't seen it before, or other 4 seats in other regions. But I'm not sure. It's kind of like the SEC. I mean, you could take the 5th team in the SEC most years, and the 4th team in the SEC, and go win the Pac-12 or go win the Big 12 or whatever it might be. But I do like the fact that at least we're getting something different. Yes, and we're talking about it and throwing things out there. Will the state ever act that? That's above my pay grade, and there's more people than me, more important people than me that make those decisions.
Would you, as coaches, trust people like me and Kyle and Alec to rank these teams?
I think it's a great idea. I really do. Coaches will always have an agenda, because if I knew I was going to be the 6th seed versus the whatever that would be, the 11th seed, I would want to rank a specific team because stylistically we match up with somebody better, or the travel's better. But it gets a lot of conversation started, as opposed to what we currently have. Not that what we currently have is impossible. I just think people want to see something a little bit different. And I think there's a lot of different ways to get there, and I think it would make for, anytime people are talking about your sport and arguing. I mean, it's just like the 12-team playoff. Like, I'm really excited to see that. I want to see playoff games like this. I'd love to see the quarterfinal games after that on campus as well.
Me too.
And it'd be cool for Alabama to have to go play in the snow at Michigan. If they were the lower seed. It'd be great for Notre Dame to have to come play in Bryant-Denny. Like, that would just be really interesting.
And it's one of those things like I am kind of old school, traditional, set in my ways already. I'm on Trussville's historical board. I'm on the cemetery board. People who don't know my face think I'm 90 years old. And then they meet me and they're like, oh, I thought you'd be a lot older. But, I think a lot of people look at those potential changes or talk about changes. Well, you just can't beat Hoover. Well, you just can't beat Thompson. So you're just trying to move the goalposts.
Right.
But I don't come at it from that way. I look at it as, okay, maybe this isn't working, or maybe it's working fine, but here's something better that, like you said, common sense, like just a change that makes it better for everyone, not necessarily gives this team or that team an advantage, but makes the overall look and feel of the playoffs, just intensifies it that much more.
Yeah.
And if Thompson or Hoover or whoever, Auburn, happens to win it, then they were the best team.
Yep.
But just from a scheduling
way
it standpoint, a
Right.
different format.
Yep.
I think that'd be really interesting.
I would too. No, see if you can make it happen.
Now, none of us have the power that like a Kyle Parmley has with softball.
Yeah, I don't know how. I mean, he got the whole venue changed. I think I'm outside looking in on
Yeah.
that.
He did.
But
Well,
I think the state was so shamed from all the tweets of the bad fences and the bad playing ground. But it is great for those girls to get to play in a really quality facility.
Yeah.
And the good thing is, I mean, the finals are played in quality facilities right now, and there are a lot of people that it is their dream to play in Alabama or Auburn. I'm not discounting that.
Sure.
But from the turf to the amenities to the central location to the feel of I remember going to the Clay and Hueytown finals game and to the Thompson in Central Phoenix City, and it just felt bigger in a more compact stadium.
Yeah.
And that's the way you want your championship games to feel. I would have rather played if we'd have been in the finals. I would literally have rather played at Auburn High School than Jordan.
Yeah, and for me, no disrespect to any, especially 7A schools, because of how big they are. And again, here comes my nostalgia again. I can't kick it, but I miss those kind of atmospheres that I used to see at being from Trussville. I'll just use this as an example. I mean, Jackwood Stadium was falling apart. I could go pull bricks from it, and the place would fall down.
I did have a deer stand, I think, as a coach at one point in time.
It needed to come down, or before it came down, it needed a lot of work. But these newer stadiums are great. I know most of them want to incorporate a track, and you have to. But that Friday night atmosphere is so different because the away side and the home side are so pushed back.
Yeah.
I've been at some of these games where I'll see like a student section hollering at the other student section,
right?
And the one on the listening end is like, what?
Yeah.
Like you can't quite hear it, and I'm like, that makes for a tough Friday night atmosphere where I grew up, or when you played out here, where it was just like rock is right on top of you, carnival type atmosphere. But if you moved it to Protective Stadium or somewhere like that, it'd be cool.
I would even rather play at Crampton. We opened one year when a few years ago against Central Phoenix City, Crampton Bowl, and there was a good crowd there, and it felt kind of like a bigger event.
When it feels full like that.
Yes. So I think there's a lot of different ways to get there, and again, I'm not the decision maker of the state. You can write proposals to the bill in the face, and I'm sure we can submit it. There's some things I'm sure I'm talking about that I don't know about. But talking to coaches, the way that Birmingham championship was played 2 years ago, there was a lot of fans of the way of the event, of the proximity of having shops and restaurants and hotels nearby, and you just have this mass population from easy accessible from Montgomery, Huntsville, and Birmingham that could come to the midweek games. Yes.
Yeah. So off the playoff stuff, back to this season. Is the mindset pretty much the same as last year? Is it just attack? Is that kind of the word?
It's not going to change. I mean, we're going to, more times than not, if we can block people, we're going to take the ball first, and we're going to come out swinging. If that works, you still do it, and we're going to be aggressive on special teams and hopefully defensively. And we're in the second year of most of our systems, even though we're making tweaks and changes, and no different. I mean, you almost have to have that mindset in this region, because there's two schools of thought when you play teams that are better than you. One is, let's play conservative and try to keep it close to the fourth quarter and run the clock. And the other school of thought is, let it hang out there, and it might be a wild game, and we might get our butts kicked, and we might lose by 40. But you know, the kids, in my estimation, understood that, hey, we were attacking even when we were playing the bigger guys on our schedule, and I think they appreciated that. It was kind of a different mentality, and not saying one's better than the other, but if I'm running this program, that's just kind of what it is.
Exactly. How do you offensively? I know you're a defensive guy, but I think I had y'all last year most points in Vestavia history, regular season.
Right.
347 points, 35 points a game, something like that. How do you improve on the most offensive output in school history?
I think we can play faster. We may have to play faster because we're not going to be as big or as skilled up front as we've been in years past. Traditionally Vestavia has had big lines, tough physical lines, and not as much skill. We're going to be blessed to have a good amount of skill by our standards here, and we're not as big or physical as we've been in years past on either side of the line of scrimmage. So we're going to have to find ways to get the ball in space to playmakers, and I'm challenging our offensive guys. We need to play faster than we played last year, and that's just, again, you look at the analytics, we need to score. The teams, I don't care what level of football, the teams, you can look at the Super Bowl, you can look at Georgia in the playoffs, Alabama, how they've transitioned in the last 3 or 4 years. At every level of football, there's a premium on scoring football. There's just not the old rock'em sock'em 10-7 LSU Alabama games anymore. And I'm a defensive guy. We gave up probably a touchdown more a year than I would like to last year playing, but we scored, like you said, we scored 35 a game, and we're there in the end with the teams that we haven't beaten that we need to beat, and we need to improve upon that, and hopefully we can find some guys up front on both sides to hold the point of attack and block people. But yeah, I mean, it's no holds barred. We're trying to play faster than anybody else and light up the scoreboard.
Sounds like in early August I'm gonna have to be doing my clinches, get my wrist prepared to cover.
I hope so.
We
play. Mountain Brook's obviously done a great job defensively. Homewood was playing better by the end of the year last year, and then you got Thompson Hoover. So there's no. We're going to have to be in that mode to right off the bat. I mean, it just kind of is what it is. But we need to find a way to get to the 30s against the better teams on our schedule, like the Trustfuls, and find a way at the same time to play well defensively. And we weren't able to do that last year.
Anything else you want to talk about? Glory days?
No,
baseball?
I hate glory days. There's a great line in The Sopranos. And I don't even watch The Sopranos, but I listen to a podcast. It says, "Remember when is the lowest form of conversation." So there's not a whole lot of remember when. Hey, no offense to the Historical Society, whatever group you're a part of. But no,
I understand.
I say it in joking, but my past year has nothing to do with these teams.
Sure.
Those guys, I think they respect the tradition and the history here, and that's part of who we are, and it's part of why we want to. It did me such good to hear from a bunch of the Vestavia guys last year saying that we were proud of the way you guys played, physicality and toughness, and that's what this place has prided itself on. Coach Anderson did that for years and years and years, and got away from it for a little while, for a year or two, but hopefully back in that mindset of we're going to play a physical brand of football with hopefully the innovation and quirkiness that comes along with it.
Yeah. Well, that sounds good. I appreciate you doing this.
Thanks for having us.
Letting us drive up this hill. So y'all make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, click the bell for notifications, and make sure you come out here for a Vestavia Hills game this fall. I know hopefully I'll be out here a good bit as we get our schedule made. So thank you all for watching, and we'll see you again next week.